gonna catch my checklist. That's a bad bet.
Uh-oh! We back, FaXx!
Yo, welcome back to Never Fade, the NFT Podcast. I'm your host, FaXx, as always with Goodmonth. Good. Is that a Moonbirds hat, dude?
Bro, you know it.
Do you still hold your Moonbirds? You had
No,
a really
sir.
nice one.
No, sir. Yeah, I had a pretty boy. I ripped the digital prints and the nesting that they gave. I actually got it. You want to see it in the digigital prints?
Yeah. And
Okay.
bring the fanny pack if you got that too, you know?
Oh, you can't really see it too well. Let's see if I get it. This is the digital print frame that came with I think it was like the platinum nest or something. Every 32 seconds, the hat comes off and an egg's on its head. Some just delayed GIF.
You know, you bought the top of Moonbirds and I told you it was a bad idea and you faded me and then later came to your senses. Is that the story or what? How's the story go as you remember it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a rendition of the story for sure. But I think just a little bit more context for me is I had to put tax money to work. So I had this money was going to the Taxman, and it was April, I think. Is that when MoonBirds launched?
I think so.
Yeah, so I had money going to the Taxman, so I had to, the way I approach that is I'm either deploying that and then taking an L on it, or I'm deploying it and sending more money to the Taxman. So that was my FAFO on a big chunk. I think a 30 ETH chunk.
Well, look, this episode is not about Moonbirds. The reason we're talking about it.
I did sell it on its way down. I read the tea leaves on the fact that just the bait and switch on the IP really bothered me. That really bothered me. That was such an indicative moment of being out of touch. Now, whether it's wrong or right, and actually if you take AJT's perspective from Truth Labs about IP and all this stuff, he kind of hinted that they realized that they couldn't enforce or give away the IP, so then they pulled that move. But at the end of the day, they were out of touch right then, and so I sold. I was like, you guys are completely out of touch. What's very strange about the Moonbird community is that they just keep fighting, while they're sliding down.
I mean, all the way down at 2 ETH, and so the CCO change, the IP rights change, I think can be interpreted as a sort of a rug in terms of you were sold one thing and then without your input, it was changed. And I feel that community holders should have input, and I think that was a miss. And then mainly, I think the most simple way to put it is there was a big difference between expectations versus execution. And it kind of seems like there was very little to no execution over this time period. They canceled the last conference. They canceled this kind of treehouse, I think it was.
It's honestly been a comedy series, a satirical comedy series at all the out of touch missteps they've had. Seriously.
Yeah, I know. There was a lot of money and nobody seems to be able to explain what that money was used for. And I think it's very cavalier of Kevin Rose at this point to get in front of a Spaces audience or whatever communication platform and, to this day, not really take accountability for the fact that he didn't deliver on anything that the holders were expecting. The fact that people are still supporting it is beyond me. That being said, at this point, it's 2 ETH. From 2 ETH, Goodmonth ETH, Moonbirds, GMI or NGMI?
I mean, from this point?
From this point. Now, we're not talking about people bought at 30 or 20 or 15 or 8. We're talking about max FUD. It's 2 ETH. From this point, it either absolutely is a rug and goes to zero, or they start to put something together and at the very least sustain and start to climb out of this hole?
It's the hardest question I've had. I mean, I truly want to say GMI because how could they go any lower? And you kind of can't fade the Kevin Rose cult. There are people that just love Kevin Rose, period. You're not going to change minds. It doesn't matter what he's done in the past. His actual experience at Dig and the outcome at Dig and everything wasn't as great as everyone remembers it to be. So this dude does kind of operate a little bit on the lore of Kevin Rose, and the lore is different than the facts. So I don't know if you can actually fade the lore of this guy. So I'm going to say, I don't want to say GMI, but I don't think that they dwindle like doodles. Okay, for example, and this is kind of important. We didn't expect to talk about this, but this is kind of important. When Doodles creator or co-founder named Poopy, I feel like it just invalidates our show. When this guy
you got rugged by Poopy, surprise, motherfucker!
Yeah, so when Poopy shows up and says then GTFO, people were like, oh man, that's a bad take. I don't like people talking to me like that. When Kevin Rose says GTFO, which he did on that Parliament YouTube, but it was long form and nobody watched the whole thing. He did in that YouTube basically say ride with us or get out. If you don't want the collector's PFP, then get out. But Kevin Rose says that, and people are like, oh yeah, I ride with Kevin, So he kind of is impenetrable when it comes to.
Yeah, I think at this point, as long as he's still going to lead the project and work on the project, the bottom is in. However, he gets a lot of shit, and I think well deserved, but he gets a lot of harassment online, and I do not ever condone cyberbullying. I think it's a big problem on the internet, including in the NFT Twitter space. So I don't condone it. I'm just saying he gets harassed a lot, so that there is a scenario where he says, I don't need this, and he just walks away, and I think that's the downside risk. And as long as he doesn't do that, I mean, it's all the way down at 2 ETH. So that was not the point of the show. The reason that we were talking about this is because he pulled out the Moonbirds hat.
I will say,
which
though,
I think is hilarious.
A lot of people give VC money a lot of shit in the space. As soon as someone takes VC money, they're all like, oh, well, they're diluted. This is going to zero. You have big money bags with their hands in it now. I do think Moonbird holders should be grateful that he does have VCs in, because they will be holding him somewhat accountable to getting a business model around it. He can't exactly just walk off with the bags.
Yeah, fair enough.
He might just build a podcast, honestly. The money that he raised might just be a media network.
It's funny because on Twitter, I saw the kind of one of the head proof communications people was, this weekend, who knows about Opepen? Who can we talk to about Opepen? And I'm thinking, man, proof is out of touch.
The collector PFP.
Where have you been? We put out 6 episodes surrounding the visualized value ecosystem. We had Jack Butcher on twice. We had Jaleel on. We had Bored Elon Musk, the largest holder of Opepen, and Shrimpto, the largest holder of checks. I mean, this is basically like a Netflix documentary of this ecosystem because, we saw the value, we saw the players, we thought that, man, this is something that should get traction. Kind of in the middle there was a point when what we were hearing and what we were seeing did not match what the market was saying. There was this dip in the in that whole kind of ecosystem of those NFTs, and we kind of stayed the course and said, no, nothing has changed in terms of our thesis about Jack Butcher. Then we meet Jaleel, and this guy is like absolutely bullish and the type of person that you want behind the scenes. And so we stayed on course, and then bam, within the last week here, a lot has changed. The floor price is up big from that bottom. It's back up to like close to 1 ETH and maybe pulled back to like 0.75 before the reveal of Series 3 and 4. And good, I am absolutely blown away. I was expecting that after the reveal, which I think everyone there, was under the understanding, like if you pull one of these Series 3, which there's only 80, or Series 4, only another 80, that you would probably be winning. You would have, gained some type of multiple there on your Opepen. But I figured like after that, some people would sell, and, the lottery, if you want to call it that, was kind of over momentarily, but that's not what happened. The floor actually went up post-reveal, which I can't even remember ever seeing that before. So why did that happen? Good. Can you explain this? What's going on with Opepen?
Yeah. I mean, what happened, because we had a reveal for 001 and 002, and the floor did pull back after that. And the reason being, at that point, was people were loving what they got. They were loving the set 001. Set 002 didn't really get a ton of love, and that was, the artist there is SD 2.1, which I imagine stands for Stable Diffusion version 2.1, which is the AI. It still has value, but people aren't really chasing after it too much. And so I think the polarization between 001 and 002 made it feel like 003 was never going to be as good as 001. And so I think that's why we had some compression on the floor. And I think that's why we had a lot of listings flood and the floor price go down. Now, flash forward 2 weeks, 3 weeks maybe, to set 003 and set 004. These things popped off and truly bodied people. Like 003 is art with Batstew. There's lore in this art with it being full circle because it inspired the original Opepen. Batstew came out large for this. Like, I don't know if people picked up the sentiment, but Batstew puts out a bunch of art in his collection. If you go to his OpenSea collection, he has a ton of editions. He has a good following. He doesn't necessarily get the hype that he deserves. I think as an artist, he's incredible. He takes this static fuzzy green. He uses geometric shapes. He has the ability to deconstruct Pepe. Like, he is an artist that is a deconstructionist, and he still maintains the mimetic effect and the cohesiveness of a Pepe when eyes are scattered and bodies scattered and lips are scattered. And sometimes it's just the colors red, green, and two black eyes or two white eyes that represent the Pepe eye. It's the dude has really created an incredible body of work with the constraints that he plays with. Geometric shapes, Pepe colors, and he also has a lot of Mondrian fine art influence, I would say. So the dude is extremely impressive, and he got behind this. Like, he had fun with it, and I think that's something nobody's talking about. Like, Batstew had fun with this drop that he did with Opepen, and that shouldn't be overlooked, because if you can engage an artist, how many times have you seen an artist be engaged with a collection and they just drop their work and they just like don't care, or they're not involved, or they feel like they did work for someone else? And that wasn't the case here. Like, Batstu got behind this. Even so, he's doing an airdrop for everyone that pulled one of his editions. Like, he's treating them as a collector of his own, which is bullish. I know we talked about Moonbirds at the beginning of this, but if you look at Gremplin for oddities, I don't think Gremplin considers oddities holders his holders. I think they're Moonbird holders, Moonbird community. So I think there's a very big underlying connection happening with CCO and artist collaboration through the Opepen launch framework that not a lot of people are giving attention to. And then if set 004 disappointed, then I think we would have a little bit of a pullback on the floor price, just like we did on 001 and 002. And I don't want to say that 002 disappointed people. It just wasn't 001. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was 001, was probably too big of a shadow overcasting anything that was going to come after it, And 002, though, it's holding its own now. But something happened here around the release of 003 and 4. Something happened in terms of the interest and involvement from the widespread NFT community really shifted, and focus now from all angles is coming into this collection and this ecosystem. And then to your point, Batsu was fired up about this. He was loving every second of it, and it's good for him, it's good for Jack, it's good for the collectors, it's good for the collection. And I think if we zoom out from this, like, there's a kind of a bigger point here that I want to make, which is that, when you look back at the bear market, what happened is it started to become apparent that there's not that many people actually trading NFTs on Ethereum. Like, we talked about onboarding the masses during like the hype of 21 and so on, and people are constantly talking about this. But the reality is, when it boiled down to it, there was only like 30,000 unique wallets actively trading on, OpenSea, like during the bear market. 30,000. And people have multiple wallets. So how many actual traders is that? That's nothing. That's just not a lot of people. The masses are not buying high value NFTs. This is a very hyper niche game we're playing here. So then when you kind of accept that, then you think about all the fragmentation within the space, right? Everybody, and credit to everybody building and doing their own thing, but like, everybody's kind of doing their thing and trying to get their make their mark and get their piece of the pie out here. And then sometimes there's arguments and there's FUD and there's more and more fragmentation. But really, the alpha is we, and I mean the collective we, those 30,000 wallets, and I'm sure it's ticked up since the bear market. But my point is, like, we collectively really could benefit from a little bit more cohesion and a little bit more widespread participation. So then, what is this thesis behind a visualized value? My thoughts are like, dude, Jack Butcher is and should be the poster boy for NFTs. You want to go mainstream? Did you hear? Have you heard him speak? Every time he opens his mouth, the floor goes up. Christie's auction, exposure, the images that are coming through, they're clean, they're easy to understand. It's a type of meme that resonates. And like, now seeing Batsu, and then kind of this idea of like other artists joining into the fun.
Don't forget, Batsu is based in memetics. Like, this is a big deal. And people don't get it. They don't understand it. Checks is the atomic level of the checks ecosystems. Opepen is in the checks ecosystem. That's been said. That's been documented. There is connection there. Rarity was defined by single check holders for one of ones. There's a tie there. It's based on memetics. It's based on trolling verification of Elon and paid verification versus blockchain and provenance and consensus and distribution and decentralization. So the first artist that gets partnered with outside of Jack Butcher himself and their AI-tuned system is Batstu, who particularly operates on a subject matter that is a meme.
Yeah, so it's like,
which I think, like, where were you going? I don't want to cut you off because you were on the home stretch of something you were saying, and I did cut you off.
I think where I'm going is that, first of all, there needs to be projects within the ecosystem that bring the ecosystem together. And I think this is that project, number one. Then I think, like, even though it's a decentralized ecosystem and we all share that kind of these concepts and appreciation for decentralization, self-custody, independent thought, I think that having leadership and people who are able to appeal to and speak to the broader audience is a great asset. And I think that Jack Butcher steps into that role really well. And ultimately, like, people who have been tuned into our podcast, most likely were early to this ecosystem because they've been following along and they probably saw what we saw or learned about it through the show. So, none of this may come as a surprise to some of them. But what I want to point out too is over the course of this past weekend, I had a lot of people, I noticed a lot of people questioning, what is this? How does this work? How do I get involved?
The cross-collaboration from communities that came to fuck on this project for the weekend was large.
It was large. So I think that is one of the reasons why, even though, the reveal happened and kind of like, okay, like, you would think that there would be a pullback. I think the reason there wasn't a pullback is because there continues to be new interest coming in, even within our little ecosystem.
They saw it. They saw what winning a set reveal does to your bags. They saw the game in 4K coming at them live. They saw the value get swooped right on secondary because people lost. And they, lost. I don't want to say lost, but you do. You lose if you don't pull a reveal, right?
You would think so. That's my point. Nobody lost. Nobody lost.
Right. Well,
that's the crazy thing.
Well, that's the thing. There's levels to this project. Is you can lose a reveal, right? You opt in, you don't get it. That is a feeling of loss, but you're backed by a feeling of value, and you're backed by a feeling of value that happened to also go up in this instance. So that is something I want to talk about on this pod. Like, we have a lot to talk about because I put a tweet out there to have people respond for things they wanted us to cover. I also have some takes that I'm hearing on the outside sentiment that I have to be so straight up about and so straightforward that I'm counter trading every single bit of this outside sentiment that I'm hearing. I couldn't be more bullish on the bad takes. I'm hearing things about people feeling a feeling of loss for not getting a reveal. That is going to pay dividends on FOMO. Like, for those people who are sitting on the TLs and are bummed that they didn't win in a reveal, fuck out of town, boys. Like, that is not that is not this game at all. If you feel a sense of loss because you didn't get a reveal, like, you need to exit stage left of the game because you're not going to make it, or you need to figure out a strat that will get your mentality back up, because that's a net negative mentality, and nothing in this project deserves selfish and entitled FUD like that. I'll smack that out the park every time I fucking see it.
Goodmonth's taking the fudders on.
I just think it's ridiculous. I just think it's absolutely ridiculous.
What do you have to say to somebody that says, oh, this is hype right now, but they're not going to be able to sustain this. This is going to take a long time, and people are going to lose interest?
Yeah, I have a lot to say to that too, because everything that's running around in the outside circles that are just starting to hear about this, there's the people who don't fade themselves. There's the people who understand they don't know what they don't know, and they understand that if people are seeing something here and it's still early, they should probably take a low-risk swing on some fluoropepins, and they do. And then they experience it, and they're like, wow, this is really cool. I haven't felt something like this since 21. I haven't felt something like this in a long time. I'm enjoying this. That's typically the experience of the person who doesn't fade themselves and can get out of their own way. Then there's the people on the other side of the outside sentiment that say, I don't know. I'm not sure. What have I seen recently that's like this that I can make a comparison to? And what everyone's going back to that I've heard is this is just like 6529, the memes, the 6529 memes. And they're a little traumatized. The same people that are traumatized are the same people that got bit by the hype in January of the 6529 memes that popped off. The minute those memes started popping off, I was like, okay, this is taking the rare Pepe model and the VVD empire that he's ran on the rare Pepe series, and this is bringing it a little bit more mainstream with 6529. And 6529 made it more approachable, and people were having fun. And that is why 6529 memes went wild, because they were having fun, and they were feeling something. But they were memes. 6529 has priced them very approachable every time. And now the barrier to get those memes is allow lists, and it creates gas wars. So what happened? Did 6529 have a wonderful release with 6529 memes? Absolutely. Did he strike in a bear at a point where there was a heartbeat? Absolutely. Did he know when he was striking in January? Yeah, absolutely. Did he have a win and a success in his project? Absolutely. Is every drop going to hold its value on secondary? I don't know about that. But if you think that the results of going highly speculative to a little bit tiresome on 6529 can translate one-to-one to what Jack Butcher's doing, you haven't really opened up the book. You haven't really looked into it. Because what is a problem right now with 6529? I'll tell you what, the people who are big holders of 6529 memes, they're happy. They're allow listed. They get great polls. They got a Grant Yoon, 6 weeks ago. They get these artists coming in doing things that are adding value to their bags, and they're on a mission to collect full sets. He's running a good game for his loyal big bag holders, and that's fine. There is a negative effect of gas wars. Okay, that happens when there's demand and you're doing it on the chain of provenance. So the game in 6529 has changed. Jack Butcher in Opepens is not doing anything like that. There is no allow list. There is no gated thing. There's a random reveal that you can possibly lose out on something that you really want. Bummer. But you still have an opportunity to get back in the game. So these 6529 memes at a point in time in the bear versus where we are today, saying that we've seen how this plays out before, we've seen how these number of additions play out before, I couldn't argue any more with these people that that's just such a bad take. And the reason being is because 6529 memes, their supplies on those memes, they're memes. The supply could be whatever they want. They're 1,000 editions, 5,000 editions, 500 editions, 300 editions. The rules are arbitrary. The editions are whatever 6529 and crew decide them to be, and there's going to be as many seasons, as many mints, as much supply as possible. Opepen, 16,000. Just like CryptoPunks, 10,000. Just like Apes, 10,000. It is fixed. There is not enough Opepens for people in the space to participate.
Yeah, I agree that fixed finite supply is a huge, huge advantage here because people know, and that kind of transparency, which is a hallmark of this whole ecosystem, helps a lot. And what I kind of like about it too is there's like different ways to play the game. There's going to be people who are going to, play these drops and either buy in or sell according to the drops and all that. And that's this like trading game, this like pre-release, reveal, and then post-release secondary trading game going on. But, not everybody wants that. And so the alternative, which is a much more attractive, I think, to a lot of participants, is you have your Opepen. When the releases come up, you opt in. If you get one of those releases, great. If you don't, you wait for the next one. It's like no stress. It's enjoyable. And for the enjoyers, it's going to continue to be enjoyable for as long as this takes, and I really like that kind of, easy path to play the game. And I think that's why people are realizing, hey, I can get one of these and I can just coast on this for the next year.
You could be entertained for the next year. Isn't that what we always wanted? In 21, it was like win, 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 win. Yo! You get a year of win. You don't even have to ask. You get a year of win. And you get to be introduced to new communities. That's the crazy thing is like Batstew's community came into Opepen to get a piece of his art. Opepen community went into Batstew's collection to collect his art. Like, it creates a mini event for these artists, and it creates a little bit of community collaboration that, I just couldn't be any more bullish on. To be honest with you, I am having a conflict when it comes to my strategy because I want to participate in all of these drops. I want to pull these reveals. And I didn't think that was the case. I was going to just go unrevealed the entire time. I was going to hold my reveals. I was going to have a blank Opepen in the hallway,
Sir, you're going to have to turn off your computer and tune out if you don't want to feel the FOMO of every fucking release that's coming up here. Let's do this, good.
But wait, before we get to that, because there's also there's some other FUD going on out there, and Dee's brought this FUD on Spaces the other day, or just earlier today. It's that he's pretty much calling everybody like dorks or nerds or whatever it is that are like going after editions versus the uniques. So like 004 having unique, PFPs is more powerful than holding these editions. These, I'm going to counter trade your ass right now. It's in this collection. Like, if you're not playing a fixed supply of editions with artist names on it, because you're going for your unique PFP, tell me you're living in 21 without saying you're living in 21.
Catch up, D's. The meta's changing. Let's do this, dude. On your Twitter, @GoodmonthETH, you posted a tweet saying, shoot me questions about Opepen. in the replies. I'll cover them in the next podcast on @NeverFadeNFT. And so let's just run through some of these comments. All right. We have Bored Elon Musk, the largest holder of Opepen, asking, what's your prediction for when the last release is made available? Month and year.
I don't think it releases.
Never? Why? What does that mean?
I think leaving the 200th drop as the blanks that possibly get memed metadata updates whenever Jack or community feels like it, feel like could be the most powerful meme of this whole thing. One of my favorite things about Dr. Dre is his anticipated album. It's one of my favorite things about Dr. Dre. He still hasn't dropped it. You think he's ever going to drop that? No. He's not going to.
Not. But that wasn't the question, because, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, that the 200th drop will be the blank. But I guess then the question becomes, and you're saying, well, there won't be a drop; it'll be left blank. And you're saying Jack's gonna Dr. Dre this thing, which is fucking a hot take. I love it, to be honest. So then, when is drop 199? When is drop 199, kid?
Yeah. It's not gonna be 2 years from now. It's by the end of the year.
Oh,
100p.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh wow, you think 6 months of drops?
Yeah. Jack is a mastermind of attention. He knows how to get attention. He knows how to keep attention, and he iterates on the attention. As attention starts to move off this thing, he will move quicker. He will move faster. He's not going to play with your emotions on time. He's not going to let his projects be halfway done when the bull hits. His project's going to have provenance before the bull hits. All drops.
Another hot take from Good. Love it. What artists would you like to see featured the most?
But the 200th drop ain't coming.
I like it.
You know what? You know what would be sick is he sets, because it's the blockchain, you can set this on blocks. They set it on a block that's supposed to be like 50 years in the future. Or they set it on a block to outlive us.
There's so many ways this can go, and I think that the beauty of it is, like, someone has to make these decisions, and we want Jack to make these decisions.
Don't want me making them, dude. I mean, really, honestly, tell me this: if the final drop were a blank that was set to reveal in 150 years, what type of heirloom do you think you'd have in your bag?
Dude, the amount of lore that would have been built up to that point. And
we gotta cut this from the pod, dude. I can't have Bored Elon knowing my strategy, man. This is me taking a damn pistol against a tank, a platoon of tanks.
It's okay. This will be forgotten about. For now, the meta is opt-in. Like,
Yeah.
everyone's
we're
gonna
share
opt
it.
in.
We're gonna share it. We don't hide the takes. I do want to just say, really, like, I'm so happy with Bored Elon being the biggest holder. Like, what a great dude. Like, just listening, like, being up on stage with him Friday before this happens, like, a great interviewer, which means he's incredibly curious. He has genuine questions, right? And he doesn't necessarily need to have questions. He knows a lot. He could be given the answers most of the time. I'm just, like, super impressed by that guy.
I know. That's kind of like one of the cool things that's come from this community is the people who are representing some of the biggest bags are hyper engaged, and really, I just like their mindset. Also, Space, is someone that has a lot of the 001s and just a huge bag that I've talked to him on the phone before, and he's just a diamond hand, and he loves it, dude. So,
yeah.
All right, what artists would you like to see featured the most?
I can't wait for the Tyler Hobbs drop. I think that's gonna melt faces. I'd be really excited to see a Grant Yun. I don't even know if I'm saying his last name right. I'd love to see a Grant Yun or Grant Yun drop. I'd love to see a Damien Hirst drop because checks are influenced by the currency that Damien Hirst did with the polka dots. I'd love to see that full circle from like 21 to 23 because Jack's really taken the torch from Damien on that. I'd love to see a Shepherd Fairy drop. Be so sick. Like an Obey style Andre the Giant has a posse Opepen.
Yeah. Oh, God, that's fucking lit.
Well, I think, dude, like every time I see that blank Opepen, I see Andre the Giant, like old school, like the old school hand drawn. Like if Shepherd Fairy could bring that like hand drawn nature, that would be so sick. I'd be so into that. I mean, I'd be remiss to not say Banksy. Like if Banksy hit one of these with Opepen in just broad day, like no one should ever open their computer if that happens. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. If that happened, a party on Never Fade. We'll throw a party. We'll throw a party for at least 200 Opepen holders to celebrate that reveal if that goes down. I think it would be really cool to do like a muralist set where a popular muralist in inner cities hit each edition. And hopefully they're also no-namers. Like, that's what I want out of this project too. I want to learn about new artists. I want to see there's a slew of art block artists that are just so damn good. And in the generative side, the human unreadable drop that happened on Art Blocks Curated last week is just phenomenal. I think it'd be really cool to bring some of that art in, and I think this has the way to proliferate that art a little bit more and help onboard people into highbrow art.
So that was a really good question from someone on Twitter, and I'll throw in an artist that I think is probably gonna be a lock to at some point make an appearance here, and that's Snowfro.
Yeah, I'd also like to see Jeff Stapleton. Also, I'd like to see Tink from Nike come in and fuck around a little bit.
Dude, there's so many ways to go is the reality. And let's not forget that we haven't even talked about the AI playground that, holders, so my understanding, are going to have access to be able to kind of produce their own AI version of Opepen. And I'm kind of, we don't know much about it yet, but I'm assuming you can kind of like get in there and iterate. And then if you make something that you really like are proud of, you can mint it onto your blank, how would you compare Opepen to quote classic PFPs like Punks and Apes?
There's a divide going on right now, and it just happened with 03 and 04 around, do you want the PFP or do you want the art? I think it's a beautiful thing for this project with having 16,000, providing those options of additions and PFP opportunities where you can use the additions as PFPs, but they're not unique. Frankly, I'm bearish on the idea that PFPs need to be unique. Because there is such a surplus of PFPs, I enjoy seeing people use additions. Actually, no, I don't even need to be bearish on it. I just need to tell you what is actually happening. And what's actually happening is people are changing their unique PFPs to be a 20 edition 10 edition bats do. That's happening. So for people like these who are saying people only want uniques as their PFPs, I can specifically tell you that's not true.
Yeah, in fact, proof in the pudding here, somebody who has a Series 1 and is a longtime participant in the Bored Ape Yacht Club, he has apes, who spiked one of these 20 editions, the beautiful green one.
You're talking Boomer.
Boomer
Yeah.
LFG. Yeah.
Yeah.
He spiked one. Congrats to Boomer. And what did he do? He changed his PFP to this one. He's got apes. He's got a Series 1, which is a unique, and then he put up the 20 edition and it has this PFP because he fucking loves the art.
Yeah, and he loves that he bagged one. And I think the thing is, it's like, it's about expression. PFPs have always been about expression. So to the question, how does this differ from, how does it compare? I think that we're at the point where if you want to identify as a CryptoPunk, then fine. That's great. If you want to identify as an ape, fine, that's great. But they are collector items at this point. You are not... Humans are evolving in this space beyond their PFP. And not many people can make their PFP a brand. So I think it's very understandable that your PFP is you're going to grow out of your PFP as you grow as a person. And that PFP is going to do one of two things. It's either going to be a collectible or you're going to sell it if it has sales value. So, I think CryptoPunks, like I have a CryptoPunk with a check over its face. That's my iteration of my PFP. I think Opepens will be a dominating PFP for the next 6 months. And I think we will grow out of them. And they will become majority collector items. I think a lot of people won't even pull their Opepens out the garage and ever put them as a PFP because they are already in the beholder's eyes a collector item. So I'm not sure if I'm answering that question. The question I would have back, who asked that?
That was by Just Me, who has been pretty active. And
justme.eth.
Yeah.
I would say, my question back to Just Me would be, do you think that Opepens are going to hack provenance as fast as Apes did? Because it's very likely that they do. Apes hacked provenance, time warp provenance, faster than CryptoPunks did. But today, CryptoPunks, provenance is outweighing the value of the collectible of Apes, which makes a lot of sense. And I think that Opepens will have that warp. I do think we're going to see Opepens unrevealed sitting at 10 ETH at some point in the next 6 months.
Yo. Oh, let's fucking go, dude. Wait till Bored Elon is going to jump out of his fucking chair when he hears that take. All right, we got another great question here, and thank you everybody for these questions, I love this community, man.
I love this community too. What do you think? What's your take on that PFP take?
I think that Opepen is the result of important learnings involving those surrounding CryptoPunks and Bored Ape Yacht Club. CryptoPunks have provenance. I think that's one of the biggest things that they bring to the space. And also this simplicity, right? It's just these pixels. And I think we have that with Opepen too. There's provenance and there's simplicity.
Just 4 cubes.
But there was also this kind of narrative that evolved during 21, which is utility and like, well, CryptoPunks, they don't do anything. And then suddenly Bored Apes come around, and it's like, oh, if you hold a Bored Ape, you get a dog, and you get this ape coin, and you get this all this crazy utility. And obviously that fueled a lot of the hype cycle. But looking back now, you know, I would say the main utility of the Bored Ape Yacht Club PFPs was, one, community, and then two, the airdrops. People got either NFTs or coins. And the rest of it, you know, what is it? It's a little bit of this expectation versus execution thing playing out. It's hard to build a fucking metaverse. It's hard to build a game. And, you know, I think that some people now are looking at apes and thinking, well, you know, the prime of apes has passed, and, you know, the airdrops have come and gone, and, you know, their little utility roadmap is exhausted for now. And I think the price has reflected that. That being said, they're still a blue chip. But I think when we get to Opepen, it kind of takes this other form of, like, it can be identity, there is community, there is utility, but the utility is a very executable plan. It's a transparent and executable plan. What's the benefit of that? The benefit of that is tempering expectations. Nobody's expecting Jack to produce this like metaverse crazy experience. They just want the packs. And guess what? When the packs drop, people are fucking fired up, dude. And it's like, again, the simplicity of it. So I think it's like, you know, CryptoPunks and Bored Ape Yacht Club needed to crawl and walk so that Opepen can run.
That's right. That's right, dude. And I think the other thing is, you're going to be remembered in the bull for what you do in the bear. And what you do in the bear is only going to be able to be communicated in short form with what your PFP is. And that means that when the bull comes back on, and everybody wants to be on the blockchain, and everybody wants to be an old head, they're going to come in and pay whatever price they need to pay to feel whatever collaboration and community they need to feel to buy their way back into the space. And status has always driven adoption. Don't get it twisted. Like, utility does not drive adoption. Status drives adoption. People do what they do because they want to be perceived a certain way. And when enough people do that, then utility follows it. Then the applications come. First the network, then the applications. And PFP is access to network. So we don't have enough blue chips for people to slip into. It's actually a crime. If you think about it, Cool Cat's falling off, Doodle's falling off, MoonBirds falling off. Every one of those communities falling off means what? That there's only 20,000 blue chips. And I'm not even counting Make and Azuki. I'm saying the bluest of blue. There's only 20,000. There's going to be a whole hell lot more than 20,000 people that want to ape into their status when they feel like the only thing worth doing is being on the block.
That's the thesis. All right, we got another question from one of our listeners in the community here, Solo_CPU. We see you, Solo. Thank you. Oh, here's a question. Do you think artists will have opt-in failure anxiety later? Like, what fun mechanics will artists try to add to attract opt-ins? So he says like Batsu doing airdrop.
I don't think we're going to see failure of opt-ins for a really long time. And Jack is going to sniff out, like Jack says 200%. Jack and Jaleel are like, in Traf. They say that 200% demand is the criteria. That's not their criteria. I mean, the minute that demand comes under a G, they're switching up the game.
Yeah. They understand how this market works, and they're going to do their best to put something very compelling. And I don't really picture a scenario where an artist that they collab with has to worry about opt-in percentage.
There will be an artist that gets hurt in this. I mean, I do think that there will be an artist that gets their feelings hurt
Down the line, maybe.
I think that when you get enough attention and you get enough eyeballs, you get a lot of criticism. So I think Batsu slid under the radar and was celebrated 100p, but now there's a lot of eyeballs. So Tyler Hobbs comes in, market's gonna go crazy, people won't have exposure. Before you know it, they're gonna start talking how Tyler Hobbs has fallen off because it just doesn't hit like the Fidenza does.
Oh man, you know what it is, dude, is people love to sit at home and be critics. Stew and Fud, everyone's a critic, dude.
Yeah, it's man in the arena stuff. It's Teddy Roosevelt quotes, right? It's like everybody's a big boy when they're not the man in the arena. And I think Jack's got his pulse on this. They know how to steer attention, but we have the pulse on psychology of this far in advance. You know what I mean? Like, I hate to take that victory lap right now on this. I know we don't typically do that, but I will counter trade your down bad Tyler Hobbs takes about how it just doesn't hit like a Fidenza. Then I will check your bag. Then I will see you have too many Fidenzas or not any Fidenzas. And then I will counter your ass.
Hey man, speak for yourself. I'm here for the victory laps. Do you want me to recap? Were we saying buy Solana at $8? Were we saying buy DGods at 3 ETH? Were we saying buy Opepen at 0.2 ETH? We're gonna take fucking victory laps here. I don't know what else to say good. If you subscribed to Never Fade NFT Podcast and you had a bag of ETH and you just deployed that ETH on what we've talked about on this podcast, you would have had a great 2023 so far. So I'll be happy to drive some victory laps around here. But we do have another question from Solo. Do you think we will see animated sets, i.e. DK motion? Can you elaborate in your beliefs about Eddie 4's value, community, rarity, one-of-one loneliness, etc.?
Hey,
so you've been putting out
Eddies.
some takes. So he's specifically, I think, responding to some of your takes. So the first question is, do you think we'll see animated sets?
Animated sets, Board Elon, when asked, two artists that he wanted to see was DK Motion and Kyo Kill, which I'd love to see both of them as well. Definitely. 100% animated. I mean, we already have dynamic. So, I don't really think there's a difference between a dynamic set and an animated set. But if you're talking about the actual Opepen moving, hell yeah. Sign me up for an Opepen that's Harlem shaking. I will go in on that for sure.
So the other question is, and I know you've been bullish on the 104 editions, the 4 edition Opepen sets. So what's the take? What's the take on the 4 editions? Why have you been accumulating those?
He wants that 4 Eddie take, huh?
Yeah.
All right. I'll hit him with the 4 Eddie take. 3 Eddies cartoonish, Way I jet ski the shore, it's 4 eddies galore touching the hallway floors. Price butcher by the way the supply slice. Single coat check, a vibe when the mind's right. Look it. Those 4 eddies, son.
Let's go. You want to hear Goodmonth's take on eddies? There you go.
I call the 4 editions 4 eddies just because for short, because it's fun to say. But I'm bullish on them because one of ones are they're priced at a premium for obvious reasons. And it makes a lot of sense, especially if people only want something unique. Then having a unique one of one in something that is editions makes sense. But the 4 editions is, I believe, when an artist is putting together a set, and Batstu didn't confirm this. He actually denied this, but I kind of find it hard to believe, and I'll point out why. So I believe that when an artist is making this Opepen set and they have the edition sizes in mind, I think they're going to FAFO on the 40. They'll iterate on the 20. They'll get inspired at 10. 5, they're cooking. And I think they take a step back at 4. Because I think when they start thinking about what the 4 should be, I actually think they're going to come up with the 1 while they're trying to come up with the 4. So I think the 4 edition, from an artist perspective, is the pressure cooker that pushes the artist for the one of one. Because the artist, some might work backwards. Some might be like, this is definitely the one of one, so now let's derive from there. But I don't see any artist going, this is definitely the one of one, now let me work at 40 and try to get as close to the one of one as possible at the 4. Like, even if they do that, I think the 4th is the hardest edition mentally to create.
That's super interesting take. There's logic there. I don't know, like you said, that wasn't the logic that Batsu shared, but I can see the logic.
But look at the backgrounds.
I just love that green. I don't know what color that green is, but
well, he does that static. That's his static green, that fuzzy green that he does on everything. But dude, look at the backgrounds of the 4 and the 1 of Batstu. They're both that white tile.
I'm gonna wrap my car in that green, dude. That's what I'm gonna do. I wanna ride like the static green machine, dude, around town. How about that? With some red interior.
I just popped a car yesterday too, and I might need to go take that. I might need to go take that and get that wrapped. I actually was thinking, because I've always been thinking about getting, I'm kind of a weirdo, so I'm like, pink checks on the golf balls, hoodie punk embroidered in the headrest. Like Trippy Ape on the light. Like I got use cases for all the Pfps.
The Riddler's freaking mobile, dude. Let's go.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking, like, what might have to throw in a Opepen, like having that one of one Batstu like embroidered on the headrest. Call it the Pepe mobile. Like,
so one more question here from RottenCoffee.eth. Thoughts on Opepen becoming something like a Supreme?
So I would say the new Supreme is Kith. Shit, I don't know, man. I mean, I'd love to see it. I don't. Pepe will break out into some high fashion. Jack's a fashionable guy, of course, but I'm not sure. No, you know who said that?
That was Rotten Coffee, Goblin Town PFP.
Rotten Coffee's really asking, I think, is Jack Butcher gonna be the next Virgil?
Yeah, because it's like you gotta think about, what are we talking about? Are we talking about the production of clothing and retail items, or are we talking about just the idea of a brand and whatever that means native to what that brand does?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. What I could definitely say is that Jack is a creative director, and he knows how to collaborate with other creative directors. So when you think of a brand that does great collections, like a Kith, where they do all these collections with other creative directors and they collab, then Jack is that. Jack is Kith of the digital world. So I don't know how physical Jack really would want to get. Like, I think I could picture him cringing if we said yes to that. I don't think it's I don't think it's beyond him. He definitely could, but I think if we would just invalidate ourselves if we said yeah, for sure. We could That would just be we're just bullish on everything, which is not the case.
So let's put a pin in Opepen here. I think we covered a lot of ground, but I did want to talk about one more thing.
He wants to open pin. He wants to open pin the Opepen.
Let's open this, and there was the Checks Elements auction, started at Christie's with three pieces, moved onto the internet. And one of the things that I was kind of blown away by, which I think is an interesting signal that I wanted to talk about, is that the auction at Christie's was absolutely a success. It was a great opportunity for exposure for Jack, great experience, I'm sure, for, things he's worked towards as an artist. Congratulations across the board to him and his family and to the people who collected those pieces. But what we saw was that his internet friends really showed up to the auction online, and there were higher sales in the auction online that Jack and Jaleel conducted than there were at Christie's. So this anon auction online brought in more money and higher sales than Christie's. Goodmonth ETH. What do you think about that?
So bullish. I mean, money's on chain. Money's digital. Money doesn't like to be KYC'd. Money doesn't like to go through the approval process that Christie's puts up. It's a bullish node to digitization. It is a bullish node to where memetics are born. And I'll be honest, I am surprised that the checks did go as high as they did across all editions, but it expanded what checks means to the space for me, because some could say, if you want to counter this, some could say that there's too many checks out there. You have the editions which burn, but you still have them. So there's about 6,000 editions. And then you have the checks that also burn that get turned into lower check supplies. But there's a lot of them out there as well. And now we're just introducing more checks to the world. And so some people can make the argument that this is dilutive. But obviously it's not. Obviously it's a canvas. Obviously it's a canvas that can introduce new colors, new concepts, new themes. The element concept is like a framework. Jack is a master at constraints. He's a master at giving himself rules, and he gave himself rules of these elements for this piece of work, and it worked, right? Elements, to my knowledge, elements have never been a part of the checks ecosystem, and that includes Opepen. So this was a new concept overlaid on it. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, I think, I think it was kind of designed for the checks collectors that want to have a really like high quality and thoughtful print delivered, and also want to have the provenance of participating in that early experience of the auction at Christie's and commemorating that. That's kind of like how I looked at it. And congratulations to you as well. I know you picked up Check's Element serial number 2 in some type of like voodoo move that you did somehow to, I don't know, outlast the competition and get like a great snipe on that. But how are you feeling as a collector of one of those?
Yeah, I'm excited for the print, like I'm excited to get the print. I'm excited to have it in the house. I love the colors that I got. I got a composite, which combines earth and air. It's just funny. It's like the red doesn't fit my house. Like pink does, but like red, the deep reds didn't fit my house. So that one cereal was kind of off the table for me. And what I did on the composite auction is I overpaid for the time. That's how I won. Nobody was bidding above 3. And so I dropped a 4.2 ETH bid on Serial 2. And I think what was happening is everybody was looking for colors that they liked. And I just wanted to strip emotion out of it. So in each auction, I just filtered by the ID. And I looked at the lowest ID of each edition. And I basically decided, of the lowest ID I could find, what's the best art that I could find as well. And Serial 2 smacked it out the park. And it happened to end before the next 2 or it ended before Serial 1 and Serial 3 ended. So it was sandwiched. And Serial 1 and Serial 3 were the final auction before the alphas. And so I knew there was going to be a fatigue-driven bidding war for Serial 1 and Serial 3. And I knew that Serial 3 was going to go for way more than what anyone could get Serial 2 for, simply because the adrenaline of bidding at that point was going to run its course. So that's exactly what happened. So I nabbed Serial 2 at 4.2, and Serial 3 ended up going for 9.
Yo. Yeah, well, you're playing a serial number game that I didn't really hear from other people. So there you have it, dude. Always coming in with some fresh angles.
I mean, I think also
takes.
like there's narratives of like, oh, well, you have a composite and there's 24 composite and Order had 10 or Isolate had 10, whatever it was. But at the end of the day, I've learned in this space that if you have to breathe more than 3 words to tell your narrative of why yours is valuable, you are alone.
All right. Well, that was a pretty cool experience. It was pretty enjoyable, and some beautiful art came from that. And then it inspired Opepen Release 4. So I do want to get to another topic here on today's show, and that's a little bit of a controversial topic. You see I'm wearing the orange D-Gods hoodie. Shout out Frank. And that's Bitcoin Ordinals. Now, when Bitcoin Ordinals first hit the timeline, I will be the first to say that I was a skeptic, and I thought that the idea of like indexing this inscription onto Satoshis didn't make a lot of sense. And it's like, why are you doing this on Bitcoin? Ethereum is the smart contract, utility blockchain. Why are you trying to put, lipstick on a pig, for lack of better explanation here? And it really wasn't until the D-Gods inscribed their block of dead gods, 535 dead gods, onto the Bitcoin blockchain as ordinals. Again, and that's all in one block. that I really was like, you know what, this is actually a pretty cool idea. And I started to take to it. So I started to learn how to buy ordinals and, what wallets do you need? And I started to navigate a bit. And just this weekend, I posted a poll on Twitter, and it asked, basically, what's your total exposure to both Bitcoin Ordinals and BRC-20 tokens? And quite a few people participated in the survey, and 60% of respondents had currently zero exposure. And then I put from $1 to $1,000, from $1,000 to $10,000, and then greater than $10,000. And so most people have zero exposure. Then there's a group that has between 0 and 1, and then it kind of pops back up between the 1,000 to 10,000, and then less than 10% of people had more than $10,000 of exposure. So what I'm hearing is a lot of people who at least subscribe to my Twitter, which, I post about NFTs every day, and I've been doing so for a couple of years. So it's a very large concentration of people who actually buy NFTs, and probably mainly on Ethereum, some on Solana, because I did kind of take this, side detour through the Solana ecosystem with DeGods and getting familiar there. I like to FAFO and just kind of learn by participating. And this is another example of that. So, but my point being that 60% of people in that poll had no exposure. There was a little cohort of people that had between $1,000 to $10,000 worth of exposure, and then not a whole lot of people more than that, which tells me in general that we're early. And I personally encourage people to at least become aware and well-versed in Bitcoin Ordinals and BRC-20s. And so I just kind of want to do a little introduction here to the people who are listening in about those. So, good. Do you know much about Bitcoin Ordinals or BRC-20 from a technical level that you can share anything?
Yeah, I'm not an expert by any means. I do know that it inscribes on a SAT. So there's 100 million SATs in a Bitcoin, much like Ethereum plays to the 18th decimal. The idea behind a SAT is that Bitcoin becomes so, pricey, which it is, so that, you can actually deal in SATs, and you can kind of deal to the power of SATs that you want. We're not really, probably in Venezuela, where they use Bitcoin frequently, they talk in SATs easier than we do. We typically talk in whole coins, at least in the States, I suppose. But that is the nature of a SAT. This SAT allows you to actually write and inscribe either text or images onto that SAT that's programmatically stored on the blockchain. It does cost money to inscribe, it costs money to deploy contracts to mint. The mint in this, deployments in Ethereum are costly on L1, and minting is put on the user. In this case, inscribing is put on the developer that's deploying. I think that it makes a ton of sense. When I first heard of ordinals, I just kind of thought about autoglyphs. I don't think a lot of people know that autoglyphs is actually art that's on the Ethereum blockchain. It doesn't mean that those autoglyphs are pieces of art on an ETH coin or on a decimal of an ETH coin, which in Ethereum, we don't call it a SAT, we call it a GUI. So I think you're early here if you didn't know that 18 decimals removed from a whole number is called a GUI. I think we will get to a point where people will be dealing in GUI. I think Bitcoin should get to a point where people are dealing in sats. I do think Bitcoin has a resistance problem, which is a little sad to say. Although some people would say that's what gives Bitcoin its power. But, resistance is typically not a positive effect for communities. It is very strong when something needs to be overthrown. So in the event that an unruly government needs to be displaced or overthrown, then I think the resistance behind Bitcoin and the mentalities there is extremely useful. But it does lead me to a kind of just philosophical or ideological point that I went to the conference in Miami, Bitcoin conference, and specifically went to learn about ordinals, their take on ordinals, their take on BRC-20s, and the approach was much like the way Vitalik felt about putting monkeys on Ethereum. When Bored Ape Yacht Club was going off, Vitalik kind of made the statement that this is not what the blockchain is intended for. Bullish on anybody that thinks that an open source network has intentionality that's going to be preserved, because that's not what's going to happen. It's just like people saying that, buildings are not made to have murals, and then they have murals and people love the murals. So, I think that's an atomic analogy. I don't think there are a lot of ETH maxis out there that really were upset at NFTs. I think ETH maxis out there probably, rather have wanted to hold coins than hold NFTs, because they understand the DeFi nature of coins, and there were no DeFi capabilities of NFTs at the time. But I think they ultimately appreciated it because it meant developer adoption on the Ethereum chain. I'm a little bit confused with ordinals and BRC-20s because the Bitcoin community does not like them. At the conference,
they kind of look at it like it's spam.
They think it's graffiti. They think it's graffiti on the infrastructure that is supposed to store the most ultrasound money. It's a real boomer take.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm kind of counter trading myself here, because I kind of have a boomer take on it a little bit. But the reality is, I'm not here to just stew in my own takes. I want to make sure that if something has momentum and I don't know what I don't know, I investigate, and that's the case here. So I wanted to kind of share maybe a few helpful directions in terms of getting started, and then also a couple of broad stroke narratives that have me interested. Okay. Why don't we start with the narratives? One narrative is that when you put something when you inscribe an ordinal on the Bitcoin blockchain, it is truly immutable. There's no metadata that can be later changed. The actual images or the text are stored on chain. They're not pointing to Pfps or something else. Is that stuff true good?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can put things on chain in Ethereum. Autoglyphs is artwork that is an ASCII on chain.
So why don't other NFTs do that?
They Anonymice is on chain. I haven't really poked around it. I know Jack says the SVGs are on chain, but I kind of need to poke around on that. But as far as visual is the ordinals are actually inscribed, the image is put on chain, and in Ethereum you can only do an ASCII.
Can you explain what that means?
The ASCII. It's the signatures that I don't know, they look like Rubik cubes, or they use a lot of symbols to make a picture, or You know, on Twitter when they
it's like
when
the
they do that.
code of the picture.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay,
So
got it.
yeah.
So there's this whole narrative that, like, on Ethereum, somebody can modify your NFT. And we had a whole conversation with Goblin Town, who actually did do that, and they had a reason behind it. And you can go back and listen to that episode, because I think that they had their intent was to kind of bring awareness to a problem, which is that of creators not getting royalties. But I digress. Back to our point here. So there's this narrative that, like, those things on Ethereum, when you put a NFT on Ethereum, the metadata can be changed. You can't do that with Bitcoin. And this immutable idea, I think, is a very strong narrative. And then I think back to, like, when I first heard about Bitcoin Ordinals, and maybe this is alpha, and maybe this is me just, kind of going off into nowhere land by myself. But the way I heard about it was Ordinal Punks was one of the first collections I'd heard of. And somebody who was very involved in buying those, tweeting about them, and talking about them is Dingaling.
Ding, ding, ding-a-ling.
Dingaling is a whale NFT collector, one of the largest holders of various collections. He is somebody that, won one of these high-value Azuki skateboards in that physical, gold skateboards in that physical auction. Big supporter of Azuki, I would say, is one of the reasons for Suzuki's continued success. And it's what people might not know is somewhere along the lines here, there was like a doxing of sorts that happened, because Dingaling was anonymous, and they basically identified that Dingaling, because a lot of people wonder, like, dude, where does this guy get all this money? Because he's just rolling in it. They've identified that he's actually one of the early Binance founders, basically. It sounds like
He was on the paper that were partners to FTX with CZ. I mean, he's close with CZ.
So he's close with CZ. He's big into NFTs. He is an early adopter and investor in Bitcoin Ordinals. And if you haven't noticed, Binance is now offering some BRC-20s, which we'll talk about a little bit, on their platform. There's some education on Binance Academy about BRC-20 tokens, and it sounds like, they are, going to be offering platforms to trade these. And what BRC-20 tokens are like, basically, they're supposed to be fungible tokens, but it's weird because they get traded in lots of inscriptions. So, like, if I have 10,000 OXBT tokens and I want to sell 1,000 of them, I would inscribe an ordinal that represents those 1,000 tokens. And so those tokens are fungible.
So you're minting, technically? Like, are they already inscribed and you're buying the basket? Or are you actually, like, is the basket the reservation of the spot, and you are inscribing when you purchase, like, as if you're minting?
Yeah, so, like, you can't really, like, transfer individual Satoshis. It's, like, too small. Like, I can't send you one Satoshi. There's a minimum amount that I would have to send you. And then, but each individual Satoshi is indexed as inscribed with the OXBT language or code or whatever is happening here with the ordinal. And then if I want to sell 1,000 of mine, I would inscribe an ordinal that represents these 1,000, and then I could post that for sale, which is interesting because that ordinal is non-fungible, but it's meant to be a trade of these fungible tokens.
It's a consumable. It's like what an ERC 1155 is on Ethereum, where technically
yes.
you can have 1,000 Punks Comic mint passes and the lowest price, the lowest listing is going to be the floor price.
That's right. That's how BRC-20s are currently traded. The site that I found to be useful for doing that is called unisat.io, unisat.io. You get like ERC-20s have Uniswap, BRC-20s have Unisat. And look, it's still early. The infrastructure surrounding these products is very clunky. It's very new. It's very early. But the narrative I was getting at is, if Dingaling was early and Dingaling is tight with CZ, and now we see Binance getting involved in the Ordinals ecosystem, I think there's something there not to be fading, number one. And then the other narrative is, we got the D-Gods hoodie here. Frank D-Gods is big in Bitcoin. He was very excited to inscribe that block of dead gods on the Bitcoin blockchain. That was done under 100,000. And at this point, it seems like probably impossible to be able to inscribe 535 ordinals in a single block like that. So this is probably one of the most impressive technical feats that he's executed in his time that we've known about him. So kudos to that. But the point the reason I'm bringing him up is because Bitcoin Ordinals, they trade on Magic Eden. Magic Eden has a Bitcoin Ordinal trading, marketplace, and Magic Eden came up through the Solana community. And so the Solana NFT community, which originally included D-Gods, of course, before they migrated over to Ethereum, were trading on Magic Eden, and then Magic Eden expanded to offer trading of Ethereum NFTs and so on, and also Bitcoin. So a lot of the volume of Bitcoin ordinal trading is happening on Magic Eden. And so these Solana NFT traders who have now become more comfortable with Ethereum because of the migration of D-Gods, now are trading Bitcoin ordinals, and this community, one of their leaders is Frank D-Gods. And then Frank D-Gods is rumored to have been somewhat influential in the release of this new BRC-20 token called OXBT, so like Ordinal XBT. And I'm watching that coin. Disclosure, I have a little bit of it. I'm trying to understand what's happening here, but there's this narrative that, maybe he's planning to use that as a utility token for the Bitcoin D-God holders. And it's kind of I'm getting these vibes. I haven't talked to him. I'm just reading the writing on the wall and trying to understand, reading the tea leaves. It sounds like an ecosystem of utility is being built on top of the Bitcoin blockchain. And it's kind of being shared and talked about amongst this community that's native to Solana and native to D-Gods and all of this. And I think that this could shape up to be something that we want to be involved in. So I think the big message is, if you're part of that 60% who is looking the other way right now, this is probably the time to get tuned in and start to understand what's happening and start to take a look. The main three wallets that people are using are Hero Wallet, HIRO, Xverse Wallet, and Sparrow Wallet. Get a wallet, load a little bit of Bitcoin on there if you don't have one already. Poke around these marketplaces. Check out the Bitcoin marketplace on Magic Eden. Check out unisat.io. Check out Ordinals Wallet. And there's an aggregator for ordinals called bestinslot.xyz. So just some tools here to kind of get your feet wet and at least observe, because I think some of the very early hype on the BRC-20 tokens has kind of bottomed out. And maybe if we're going into Bitcoin summer, as a lot of people are touting right now, this is the time to pay attention. So that's the message that I have for the viewers today. Good. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's high friction. So a high friction always symbolizes that you're early. it's polarizing between what Twitter says and what, being on the floor of the Bitcoin conference says. It's different. The chain is immutable. So an argument for people in Bitcoin, one of the things they love is like, it's immutable. The program can't change. Like the epochs are the epochs, the halvings are the halvings, and the supply is the supply. It's fixed. Well, they can't shut this down, and they will probably want to. So there can be, I don't know. I don't like the cultural riff. I'm going to be straight up about that. I don't like that like ETH mentality and all the NFT knowledge that we have can be brought over to Bitcoin, and it can be seen as a net negative movement for the chain. I'm bearish on that sentiment. With that said, I love the FAFO. So
personally, again, like I kind of feel like why
what marketplace takes Hero? Because I noticed
Unisat doesn't.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing that I don't get, right? It's like, for example, Unisat is where I picked up my OXBT, but it wouldn't let me connect to my Hero wallet, which is where I keep my ordinals and my Bitcoin. So I had to actually download the Xverse wallet and fund it just to be able to connect to unisat.io and buy the OXBT. And then another thing that I did is on Ordinals wallet, you can, how like, of course, DNS names, which are like the .com names, then ENS, which is .eth. Well, there's these .btc or .sats or .oxbt names, and it's so early. I mean, we might be a couple years early on that, but I think it's like I got 824.eth. I made a bag off of 248.eth. Like I'm down to FAFO for like $5. I was able to inscribe the name transfer.xbt, pretty cool name. And so now I'm starting to search. It's like $5, like the disproportionate upside. It will take, for that to become anything, it will take consensus that .xbt is a thing. OXBT is going to have to survive and grow. Right now, I think .sats is the main BRC-20. It has the highest market cap. And so there's not consensus yet. I think we're so early. And I guess my message was this ecosystem of highly engaged NFT traders can move the needle in the early phases. The Bitcoin Miami people who are looking at this like spam may not be that early target market. I think the early target market is us, the people trading Opepens, trading Bored Apes, trading Mutants. Like we're the early marketplace, and the Solana NFT community, so I think that's enough to start to build a consensus. And so I don't know. I'm not here shilling anything. I'm basically encouraging people to spend that hour to educate themselves and watch this, at least be in a position to watch this and know what to do if you want to get involved.
Yeah. You know what I think you and I are probably splitting here, right? Like we're probably splitting on the bet. I will get in with you on OXBT, and I'll grab some Ordi and I'll ride that. But I'm really bullish on Solana. Like the difference for me is Bitcoin has old heads and it's red-pilled the youth, and they all have the same mentality. Solana doesn't have any old heads. They only have red-pilled youth. And I think the builders of the next generation are really going to teach us something on Solana.
So are you saying that you're bullish on the fact that the red-pilled youth is interested in ordinals, and there's also the old heads? Or are you saying you're bullish on the Solana ecosystem?
I'm bullish on the youth. I was bullish on the youth of Ethereum with only naysayers from the boomer generation on Ethereum. I'm bullish on the youth when there looks like there's no limits because nobody actually believes in them. That's how ETH was back in 2014, 2015. No one believed in ETH. The ICO for ETH raised $58 million.
That's as much as like Ben.eth raised by saying, hey, send me ETH to my wallet and maybe I'll do something with it. That's ridiculous.
Right. I think the crazy thing about Bitcoin, and I'm not mad, like, please, if you like, I hold Bitcoin. It's a necessary coin to hold, I believe, but I don't like that the old heads and the youth can see eye to eye on Bitcoin. I don't think that's a good thing.
Interesting take.
I like that old heads think Solana's dumb. I love that Ethereum thinks Solana's dumb. I love that they mock it, they mimic it. Downtime, centralization, yada, yada, yada. Do you know how many ETH people would buy a phone that's connected to the Ethereum blockchain if they knew they got a allow list on mints? You know how many ETH people would jump on that? I have the Soul Saga phone. There's an allow list going on for the Soul Saga phone that you go mint a Claynosaurus and the floor's 46 Soul pays for the phone right there. Pretty cool. Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
You know what's also cool? There's fucking sticker packs and messages that you can mint. You can make your own sticker packs to mint and send them in messages to anyone who has the phone. You literally can send like Telegram messages. It's not Telegram, but chat messages to people who also have the same phone that's connected to Solana.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like a portal where you could just DM people from a collection just because you own a phone.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
They do it different.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like, it's just, I like to talk about, NFTs that are valuable, and we talk about punks, we talk about apes, but like in reality, when we talk about onboarding and we talk about mass appeal, like there isn't a whole heck of a lot of appeal for somebody, the average person, to want to buy one NFT that costs $100,000. What's appealing is this idea of being early. What's appealing is this idea of disproportionate upside. What's appealing is throwing, $1,000 at something and it turning into $10,000 or $50,000. I mean, and so when there's new things like this, like BRC-20 or ordinals, I want to understand it. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm not promoting it or encouraging it. I want to understand it.
And I think it's like I will not be caught with my pants down on it. I will have a bag. I'm just disappointed in the Bitcoin community. I'm bearish on my Bitcoin bag because of the community. They're in so much agreement. And we've seen this, right? We know this. FUD is good. FUD is healthy. FUD shakes out problems. But like, when everybody's on the same page and everybody's seeing the same argument, I'm going to always take the bet that the argument is old and needs to be updated.
Well, the thing is if the Bitcoin community decides that, hey, we have to do something technically to dissuade people from spamming the network with these ordinals. And there's some barriers put into place. Maybe it costs more. I think that's probably the most clear way is make it so it's very difficult for people to do these inscriptions. Well, if that's the case, then these early ordinals truly become kind of like digital artifacts, and become more valuable and scarce.
The crazy thing is like, I've talked to someone who works at a big institution who's actually responsible for providing the spot liquidity for that institution. So if you want to go buy Bitcoin from this institution, they are the liquidity for the spot is provided by this person. And so that person is very frustrated that the network is congested because it's costing the institution a ton of money to provide people liquidity. And so the cost of providing Bitcoin is way higher, and it's actually taking longer than the Swift protocol. So it's actually easier to move dollars than it is to move Bitcoin in these institutions' eyes.
That's super interesting.
The argument from a Bitcoin person's perspective would say, oh, well, they should use Lightning. And it's like, yes, they should, but Lightning isn't as well developed as, like, there isn't as much liquidity on Lightning. And not to make it an argument of Bitcoin versus Ethereum, but just saying that all the L2s that we have up and running right now, which is overwhelming, Arbitrum, Optimism, Polygon, yada, yada, yada. Like, so many L2s, we don't need them all, but it's because we don't need them all. That's why it's confusing. There is going to be a point when all institutions are providing liquidity, they're going to need the L2 solutions. They're going to need to have their ETH wrapped in WETH and on Polygon. And then that's going to become slow. So then they're going to need to have their ETH wrapped in WETH and be on Arbitrum. And then that's going to become slow. But they're already built.
Speaking about Arbitrum, I had my first experience. I used the bridge to swap some ETH into Arbitrum. Then I used Trader Joe's or something like that, which is like the swap on Arbitrum, to swap into Jimbo, because Jimbo coin had this upgraded contract that was going to eliminate the bugs, and they were going to do this like algorithmic protocol correctly. I literally swapped into Jimbo. I staked my Jimbo, and 3 days later, the contract got hacked for $7.5 million. Boy, that Jimbo, there's no more trading pair. I mean, it's one thing to buy something and then I bought the top, it went down, I'm down 50%. Okay. But in 3 days, I went from literally staking the coin to it being worth zero. It is a zero. So, learn this lesson, which I only put amount of money that I was willing to lose. This was an experimental thing. It was something I was going to put there, and maybe it was going to become something, maybe not. It failed fast. It quickly became zero. And so, only bet what you can afford or are willing to lose on experimental stuff like this. But bringing us back to this Bitcoin conversation, I think what I need to do, my job here, Good, is to bring on an expert in the space of Bitcoin Ordinals and BRC-20 and have them give you some takes and see if they can kind of move the needle here and change your mind. Because on the Never Fade podcast, we've seen your mind be changed. We've seen people drop some takes that make you kind of reassess things. So that's the game plan here, I think.
Yeah, and to be clear, it's like open minds is what runs the game. I'm not closed to this. It won't surprise me if BRC-20s, I mean, there's a culture around BNB coins. There's a culture around all these things. Like, it's not something I'm fading. It's something that I'm conflicted on. I should have hit on that. I'm conflicted of whether I break up my whole Bitcoins to do this. That's a serious conflict of mine. I rather bet on a whole coin and governments failing globally than BRC-20's 100xing, I think.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
But also, dude, like, we have Bitcoin apes, and I can't figure out how to sell them. Like, they get delisted every single place. I don't know.
The only place to sell Bitcoin apes is Ord Swap. And again, it's one of those things where, like, I think you got to set up like a Ord Swap wallet. Like, you have to set up a specific wallet on Ord Swap, transfer your ordinal into that wallet, and then sell the ordinal, and then I guess transfer the Bitcoin out. So I got some Bitcoin apes. They've been taking it on the chin a little bit because they got delisted, because they got DMCA'd by Yuga. And so they used to be on Magic Eden. If they would have stayed on Magic Eden, boy, that would have been the easiest 10x. They're still up for where we got in. But that's been some major barriers for Bitcoin apes. But look, man, I think we covered a lot of ground on this episode. I think we should wrap it up. This was, I think, interesting discussion on Opepen, where we're at, and also an introduction to Bitcoin Ordinals and BRC-20. This is Never Fade, the NFT podcast. Follow us on Twitter at NeverFadeNFT. Subscribe to our YouTube, comment, keep the comments coming on Twitter and YouTube. We love to see it. Really appreciate it. Good. Any final remarks here before we close it out?
Let's just get it. Let's see what happens these next coming weeks with Opepen. I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm excited to see these 4 eddies take off.
Love it, dude. Coining the term 4 eddies.
Yeah, hey, and come at us. If you got BRC-20 takes, you want to be heard, like, just bring the FUD. Like, I want to hear all of it. If you got FUD on any of this, I want to hear all of it.
Yeah, we're going to be mining for alpha and FUD, help shape kind of what to do with this new product, I guess is the way to put it. With that, appreciate you guys. Tune in next time, and we'll see you on the timeline. Peace.
Verifying everything.
That's a bad bet if the bags check less. About to burn back to back, flipping not cheap when that Jenny duh hits. That's the race to 250 in the world, and you chose to sleep. That's a bad bet if you wake up checkless. No more people without bags, yet they need status. Running head first with the VV check thirst. Never heard of a hearse, but they connecting the dots.